Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Calls. This is the 2026 Genesis Invitational DFS Tactics Show. Per usual, on a Wednesday night, we're going to take our final look at the forecast, and it's quite a heck of a forecast, if I might add, to figure out if that's going to have an impact on who we want to consider this week. Spoilers, it will. We're going to take a look at the mixed condition model that I made for Riviera. We'll cover my rankings. And something new starting tonight, I'm going to reach out to you as the community. We're going to make a lineup together, and we're going to put it in a big GPP. So I'm quite excited for that. Let's get right into it. All statistics provided tonight and every night moving forward are from both Fantasy National and The Rabbit Hole. The Rabbit Hole is acquiring or merging with Fantasy National, or maybe it's the other way around, Fantasy National merging with the Rabbit Hole. But either way, I am going to slowly migrate over to the Rabbit Hole for all of my statistical purposes. So make sure you go check out the Rabbit Hole. It has everything you need at the power of your fingertips to make the correct outrights this week. The optimal lineups. Of course, it has a DFS lineup maker, tournament simulator. Again, I've been very impressed with the Rabbit Hole as I've gotten more used to it and where things are. So go check out the Rabbit Hole. You won't regret it. In the description of the video, there are links to all the social media. First off, my X and Instagram, where normally I post research every Monday regarding the tournament of the week, some patterns of previous winners, things of that nature. Didn't do anything for Riv and the Genesis because we've only had 1 year of the current format, meaning very limited field, very limited cut signature event. That was back in 2024. So I didn't do anything this week for Riv, but that will return next week when we begin the Florida swing at the Cognizant Classic. So if you want to see the weekly research that I do on the PGA Tour, give me a follow at your preferred social media site. X is also where I place my weekly betting cards and top player usage in the DFS contest I play. That comes out every Wednesday after the DFS Tactics show, so that'll be out later this evening. You want to see the players I've wagered with my own money and the players I'm using most often in my lineups, give me a follow over at X. Lastly, for social media, Gabe's handle's in the description. He writes a great article called The Fringe. I really cannot recommend it enough. By subscribing to his article, you're going to get his deluxe version that comes out every Wednesday with his top plays, top values, projected ownerships, all of that. Again, I would not recommend it to you if I did not believe in it myself. I've enjoyed working with him fairly closely for the past few years now. And speaking of his social media page, that is where we put our 2026 write-ups for the Picks Challenge. And the only way you're going to be able to see our detailed write-ups is if you follow him over on X. So make sure you show him some support. Follow him over there because we want you to play along with us, whether that is in chat here or in the comments. But preferably go over to his social media page and play along with us over there. We would love to have more of you join us throughout the year for the 2026 Picks Challenge. He has taken I believe a 2 or 3 point lead on me, so I really need to step my game up this week at Riv and try to close that gap. And then lastly, for this intro, we are live. Chat's open. Want to hear from you all. I do have a poll question typed up, which is going to kind of direct us later on in the show on the lineup that we make. So I want to hear from you all. Who's your winner? How do you think Riviera is going to play with this forecast that's in play? Who are you staying away from? What types of lineups are you building? Any questions you have, feel free to put them in chat. Would love to hear from you all. That's what we're here for, to go over lineups and player options and all that. So put your thoughts and opinions in the chat. If you're not able to catch a show live, put your thoughts and opinions into the comments. I'll always get to those as well. So let's get into it. Let's figure out our strategies and our tactics for the 2026 Genesis Invitational. And we are going to start, as we always do, on a Wednesday evening over at the Super Forecast for the Pacific Palisades and the Genesis Invitational. Good evening, Echoes. Thanks for jumping in chat. Very, very much appreciated. Hopefully we are ready for the beginning of the Genesis, and if not, hopefully we'll provide you with what you need to finalize, optimize your lineups and all that. Let's get it. Let me post this poll question, although we won't be acting on it immediately. It'll give everyone a chance to kind of get their bearings. I need, let's see. I thought I had it prepared. I needed to add one more option. So, due to the fact that I want to start this kind of, mini tradition maybe with making a lineup with you all from chat, and I got this idea from somebody, I believe it was last week or maybe 2 weeks ago, to build a lineup together and enter it into a GPP or enter it into a contest. So the poll question for tonight: what type of lineup should we build to enter in the GPP? Are we going with a Scotty Scheffler lineup, essentially, Stars and Scrubs? Are we going to go with a non-Scotty Stars and Scrubs? Are we going to go balanced? Or are we going to go something else? So we'd love to get your opinions and thoughts, especially when we start making that lineup and enter it later in the show. Let's cover this forecast. It is quite hectic because they've been pummeled with rain for a while now in Southern California. Maybe not so much today, but yesterday and Monday it was drenched. They're going to get a lot more tomorrow, especially in the morning. You see about 0.3 of an inch of rain is expected right around lunchtime. It is going to be very wet, very cold, very windy start to the Genesis. Good evening, John. Thanks for jumping in chat. Very, very much appreciated. Good to see you this evening. I have a note here because I was in contact with Ron Kloss or Close, who heads up the Rabbit Hole, and I did my due diligence in checking on that question that you had Monday night about shot shaping, and his direct quote from Ron, who is again in charge of the Rabbit Hole, is that data is not available at the moment, but it is on the list of things to add. So they are quite aware of that data being, possible. That is not something that is available yet in the Rabbit Hole, but it is on their radar to add it in the future. So I wanted to make sure I gave you that info, John, or at least followed up with you on that, considering that was a question that you had Monday night, and I wasn't able to answer it directly, although with that answer, I wasn't going to be able to answer it regardless. But I wanted to give you the direct quote from the guy that runs up the Rabbit Hole. So absolutely not a problem. Glad I could clear that up for you. Like I said, there is going to be chaos tomorrow at Riv. It is, it's very wet, very cold, very windy, gusts into the 30s, sustained winds, upwards of 17 to 20 mile an hour, and everybody's going to be affected by this. If we take a look at the leaderboard, yes, some of the earliest tee times might not get all of it, but you see 10:15, I believe this is my time, so Eastern, so 7:15 local is the first tee time. So if we go back to Windfinder, it's going to start around 9 or 10. So even the earliest tee times, Sammy, JT Poston, Rico Hoey, Kitayama, Nico, Jake Knapp, even McCarty, Vegas, Pendrith, these guys, sure, they might get in, 9 to 12 holes without this humongous amounts of wind, but they're still going to have a lot of it. So if you wanted to take a strong stance, then you would want to probably use the earliest of early tee times if possible. Having said that, that's also very dangerous because with the amount of moisture that is expected to fall around Riv, we could be looking at delays. Don't think we're going to get a full-on cancellation like Pebble Beach 2 years ago, but I'm expecting there could be delays. I can't say expect. There could be delays. And if there is, look at Friday. It is dead calm. Still chilly. It's still going to be extremely wet from all the rain on Thursday, but the players wouldn't have to deal with the wind. So it's a catch-22 there. I personally gave maybe a tiebreaker to the early tee times, like Sammy. Like Sammy, Kurt Kitayama, Nico, Jake Knapp, maybe even a little bit further down, like Sahith or Pearson Coody. But I didn't go overboard with it, with the potential for delays, considering how much rain is expected to fall tomorrow. And then the weekend looks very similar to Friday. Very calm. It actually is going to warm up a little bit over the weekend. But in terms of the cut portion, and again, even though this is a signature event, there is a limited cut here. It's the top 50 and ties and anybody within 10 shots. This is a Masters cut this week. So it's going to be very imperative that you get 6 of 6 through, because there will be, I'm going to use rough math here, about 20 players that miss the cut. And that's just going to kill you in DFS. So take this for what you will. Again, maybe a tiebreaker to the earliest of early tee times, but everybody, regardless of their tee time, is going to deal with this wind. Some just more than others. And if there's delays, then that really all gets thrown out the window. So there's a look at the forecast. I will actually keep this up for more questions, or in case it changes as the evening goes on. But we're going to go to the rabbit hole just very, very quickly. I do have the moderate and windy filters selected going back to the beginning of 2025. We didn't talk about wind performance all that much this week, because it looked like the wind was going to be gone by the start of the tournament. That is clearly not the case. So going back to the beginning of last year, your top performers in moderate and windy conditions have been Scotty, Rory, Harry Hall, Tommy Fleetwood, Chris Goddard, Sepp Straka, Hideki, Shane Lowry, Ryan Gerard, and Keegan Bradley are your top 10 in terms of total performance in moderate and windy conditions. So I did not factor this into the mixed condition model, and that's why I am leading the show off with that this evening, because wind is not in my rankings. So speaking of, good segue, we'll go to the mixed condition model that I have built for Riviera and the Genesis Invitational this week. We're going to start with 10% off the tee. And we didn't talk much about off the tee this week, but I looked back at the 2024 Genesis, and particularly the early look file that I always do. And going into that tournament, let me bring up the file, the early look file from 2024 for the Genesis. And I'll show you why. Okay. I want you to notice something with these past champions around Riv, particularly their most recent outing. Look at how well these past champions did in their previous event off the tee. Almost all of them gained. Almost all of them were positive in distance as well. So seeing this, yesterday into today when I was making the mixed condition model, I wanted to make sure I incorporated some off the tee. So that's why, even though we didn't talk much about it this week, I have 10% off the tee in 2026. Just who's been good off the tee so far this year. Especially with the rain and the wind, ball striking is going to be pretty imperative. It's going to be important to be in the fairway. 10% off the tee. 5% in good drives when the fairway, when missing the fairway penalty is low. Very, very specific set of data here. 5% in good drive percentage. 5% good drives when missing the fairway is pretty forgiving. Very specific set of data, but we've seen it all week how Riv, it's not the most important aspect to find a lot of fairways around Riv. Miss fairway penalty low, rough penalty is low, the rough is kept really short. Missing the fairway is fairly common around Riv, so players are going to be hitting from the rough quite a bit. 5% in good drives, so players are either hitting the fairway or they're just good at hitting the green from the rough. 5% in carry distance. Couple of factors here. Again, we saw in 2024 how the majority of champions had been gaining off the tee and in distance early on in that year before winning at Riv. The rain is going to cause the ball not to travel as far. And Kikuyu grass is very sticky, meaning you're not going to get a lot of run out. Very similar to Augusta in that Augusta limits rollout by mowing from green to tee. One of the only places that does it. Kikuyu in of itself is just a very sticky grass and is not going to be aching for a lot of rollout. Think players like Chris Goddard who hit those low stingers. You're not going to be able to get those low stingers around Riviera. You're just not. That's the Kikuyu really limits that. So 5% in carry distance, not driving distance, but full on carry distance. 15% in approach. Again, big ball striking course. Players are going to have to hit their irons well, especially because I do think they'll have ball in hand tomorrow and maybe Friday. So irons are going to be very important. And it's going to be very important to hit greens, just flat out hit greens at Riv. Even though these greens are large, 7,500 square feet, they're not easy to hit. They're heavily contoured with false fronts and sharp edges. When hitting the green is difficult, who can just simply hit a bunch of greens? 10% there. 5% in birdies or better when you go for the green. This is incorporating some par 5 scoring and the drivable par 4 10th. When players get aggressive, who can make birdies when they get aggressive? 5% there. We talked a lot this week about the 150 to 200 proximity. So 10% in overall proximity, whether that's fairway or rough, 150 to 200 yards. 5% around the green. 5% in scrambling on Poa Annua. I wanted to incorporate something with sand, but sand saves includes some hidden kind of like putting in its metrics. So players are going to miss a lot of greens around Riv. It's just going to happen. So I just wanted to see who's been tidy so far early in 2026. And then also a little bit of hidden putting on Poa Annua, but who is generally pretty darn good around the green on these Poa Annua greens. So 5% around the green, 5% scrambling on Poa, 10% just flat out putting on Poa. Putting around Riv is very, very difficult, whether you're inside 10 feet, outside 10 feet, 5 to 15 feet. Every single metric, putting at Riv is difficult. So I just figured to take a look at the best putters on Poa Annua. Maybe that is incorrect to do so, but that's my lean this week, is just to go with total putting. 10% bogey avoidance when on courses that are difficult and very difficult. Par is generally good scores, or par is a good score around Riviera, with the exception of the par 5s and maybe the drivable par 4 10th. Otherwise, par is a pretty darn good score around here. So if players can avoid bogeys, they're going to do pretty well. 10% bogey avoidance. And then finally, because the par 5s are pretty easy And really, the par threes are a good mix. You have a very difficult, very long par three, up to like 270 now. But you also have a fairly easy par three sixth. You have a pretty difficult par three 14th, and a mediocre or average or par in 16. So with a good mix of par threes, the most difficult holes, generally speaking, around Riv are these par fours. The par 4 12th, par 4 13th, difficult. Par 4 15th, second most. The long brute par 3 is fourth is the third most, but fourth is also a par 3. Fifth is a par 4, fifth most difficult. Sixth most difficult to par 4. A lot of the most difficult holes around Riv are the long par 4s, and because the rabbit hole does not have specific cutouts in terms of lengths of par 4s, 3s, 4s, and 5s. Like if we go to par 4 efficiency, you'll just see par 4 average and par 4 birdies are better. Because they don't split out ranges like Fantasy National did, I went with when scoring on par 4s are difficult, like they are around Riv, very difficult scoring on par 4s, who's got the best par 4 average on difficult par 4s. So there's a look at the mixed condition model that I've made for Riviera this week. Pretty all-encompassing, I believe. I didn't want to overweight something too much, except for maybe irons, because there's a little bit of hidden irons and good drives. Proximity is iron related. Par 4 average has, all of it tied in together. So I definitely wanted to focus on the ball striking, but I didn't want to leave out any aspect of a player's game, because Riviera tests every aspect of a player's game. So I am the lowest on around the green this week, and around the green is definitely going to matter. So if it's a lot more difficult than I think it will be, and players are missing greens left, right, up, down, and everything, then I need to put more in around the green, obviously. But with ball in hand, I think players are going to have ball in hand tomorrow and probably Friday. I wanted to put more emphasis into the irons and particularly some distance stuff. So there's a look at the mixed condition model that I have for Riviera this week. We'll go to Microsoft Excel and the reveal of my rankings. For your information, if you're a new viewer, and as a reminder for returning viewers, my rankings are based on 3 criteria. The rabbit hole rank, or the mixed condition model ranking. The rabbit hole will spit out a ranking based on the mixed condition model that we just covered, metrics, percentages, filters, timelines that we just talked about. Fantasy National will spit out a ranking. As you can see, Scotty Scheffler is number 1 purely by the metrics. Pearson Coody 2, Morikawa 3, etc., etc. That's a big factor of my rankings. Course value is an attempt at giving a player a numerical value at how well they have played that course normally the last 5 years. I have only went to 2024 for the reasons I've talked about all week. 2024 was the only time that we had the very, very limited field, very limited cut. 70 some odd players, top 50 in ties, and anybody within 10 shots. We only have 1 year of data there. So this course value is what that player finished in 2024. You see Matt Fitzpatrick missed the cut, finished like 62nd out of 70. Spawn missed the cut, 52nd out of 70. Winner was Hideki. He's got a 1. You can agree or disagree. Riviera is one of the most predictable courses or consistent courses. I just went with 2024 for the reasons that I explained. Agree or disagree, it's what it is. Good evening, Turkey. Thanks for jumping in chat. Much appreciated. Always trust the data. You bet the. I don't know if I'd bet the mortgage on it, but I felt pretty good with Pebble Beach. Things didn't quite break my way. Also, I had the Sepstraka outright. That was pretty close. And so we're going to try and be a little bit better this week for the Genesis. I am not going to advocate anyone spend, whatever X amount of money. I'm just giving you what I see week in and week out from a statistician's point of view. But I appreciate the confidence that you have in me, Turkey. It's very, I really do appreciate that. I'm not always right, and I will own when I'm not right. Love that had him at top of the rankings as well. Yeah, we'll get into it. So that's the explanation of the course value. And then finally, projected ownerships. We are playing DFS. We're trying to find unique options off of our fellow contestants. So projected ownerships, and these are from Gabe, are a factor into my rankings. You'll notice that I do not factor in any tee time, any wave advantage if there were one, anything like that. That's why I always generally start the show with wind performance if there is wind in the forecast like there is for tomorrow. With all of that said, my rankings for the Genesis Invitational this week, Pearson Cootie number 1, and understand that I wouldn't probably make him number 1. I would be very high on him. The metrics love him. Second, number 4 and off the tee early this year. He's been very good on Poa Annua. I know the Pebble Beach wasn't the best performance, but Pebble Beach really reins in the driver, and that's where Pearson Cootie really takes advantage of courses. So I do think this is a much better fit for Pearson Cootie this week. I'm not as concerned with not playing Riviera before as some people might be, other pundits, if you will. Not as concerned with that, and he is quite unique. I'm a little surprised that Pearson Cootie is under 10% in this limited field, and that's why he is, jumping up in rankings. Whereas Scotty, even though he ranks first by the mixed condition model, he's getting hurt by the fact that he is the most projected owned player for obvious reasons. The same is happening with Rory. He was 4th by the metrics, but getting hurt by the fact that he's very popular. So my rankings, again, Pearson Cootie first. Again, don't think I'd have him first, but I am very high on him. Harris English second, and I'm a little surprised by this, but number 1 off the tee in 2026. Yeah, I was surprised. Maybe you weren't. Maybe you are. Confirms it. Number 1 off the tee early in 2026, along with several amazing statistics that we're looking at this week. Wins the Farmers a couple years back, the Farmers is a pretty good comparison course for Riv, long, Poa Annua, tests all aspects of your game. So Harris English did finish 7th here in 2024. So he's number 2. Morikawa off the win at Pebble Beach is 3rd. Patrick Cantlay 4th. Scotty rounds out my top 5. Rio Hitsatsune 6K. Rio Hitsatsune 6th. Russell Henley, Sepp Straka, Rory, and Matt McNeely round out my top 10. Again, no real issues with my top 10. You can always order or argue about the ordering. I mean, for example, I would probably make Scotty number 1, considering it's Scotty Scheffler. He's the best player in the world. But, like Rio Hitsatsune, I really like Rio this week. 6K play. Not as high on Henley. I understand why he's rating out so well with the, really good irons, hitting a bunch of greens, avoiding bogeys. He's 3rd in bogey avoidance, especially when it's difficult. But I'm not as high on Russell Henley for this reason right here. Lacks a lot of distance, and he can get behind the 8 ball with his lack of distance. Otherwise, Rory is getting hurt simply because he's pretty popular. I like Mav, Rio, I like Cantlay. So, yeah, we'll get into it. But there is my rankings for the Genesis this week. Let's sort on the price board, figure out where our fellow contestants seem to be going at various areas of the price board and how we're going to maneuver around them. In the 5 digits, in the 10Ks, we have 3 players this week. Scotty at a robust 14-3, Rory at 11-3, Tommy Fleetwood at 10-3. You see all 3 of these players are getting quite a bit of ownership. The only other player that is comparable to them in ownership is seemingly Hideki, maybe Xander, but we'll talk about them in the 9Ks. In the 10Ks, I'm playing 2 of these 3. I've essentially split my lineups between Scotty and Tommy. And yes, that means I am taking a very big chance on avoiding Rory, but you got to plant your flag somewhere. You can't play everybody. So I think Scotty is going to continue to play well. Even though he's been a little rough from 150 to 200, it's still the number 1 bogey avoider, still the number 1 par 4 performer. He's actually been the number 1 scrambler on Poa Annua. And all the talk about his putter, he's actually been okay on Poa Annua. Top 30 in this field. So a lot to like there. Obvious statements are obvious from the number 1 player in the world. And then I really liked what I saw from Tommy last week. And Tommy has been very good around Riv, even before 2024. Rory has had mixed success here. Rory certainly has the firepower for Riv. He has the distance, good wedge play and all that stuff. But Rory struggled off the tee last week at Pebble. And then Tommy was pretty well-rounded, and we all know about his performance in majors. Even though he's not 1-1, he's always a perennial contender in majors. Plays difficult par 4 as well. Very good around the greens, just off your screen. He's 5th and around the green, 4th in bogey avoidance. I just like Tommy here more than Rory, even though Rory rates out a little bit better. I just like Tommy. So in the 10Ks, if I'm not playing Scotty, I'm playing Tommy. But I am playing my fair share of Scotty this week. I am more than this 28% projected ownership. I'm more like at 40 to 45, and the rest basically is Tommy. I do have a few, and I mean I'm talking a very few, maybe 3 or 4 lineups where I'm starting in the 9s, but 90 to 95% of my lineups are using either Scotty or Tommy. So that's how I see the 10Ks. Moving down to the 9s, a couple players in here that I don't want any part of. Yes, Xander, California guy, has played very well around Riv. Seems to be getting a little bit better with his top 20 last week at Pebble. But, you think about all of his success at Riviera. That's back when he was clearly one of the best players in the world. Are you going to tell me from, the middle of 2025 onward that Xander is still one of the best players in the world just from 2025 forward? No, I would argue with you on that. He's not been good with his irons, especially early in 2026. You can see that here, his proximity, really bad. He's pretty good on Poa Annua. Again, California guy, you would expect that. He's also not been very good around the green. So his game is still not all there from the injury early last year. And because of that, because I like Tommy, that's a little bit more expensive, and there's other players in the 9s that I like, I'm just away from Xander. He's my big Rory and Xander are my fades this week. Can't play everybody. I'm off of Xander. Just don't see it this week. I'm not going to play much of Russell Henley, although it doesn't look like many people are scared of the big ballpark that Riviera is. I mean, sure, he finished top 25 here 2 years ago or 2024, but this does not feel like a great fit for Russell Henley. Hideki, very, very popular. I'm going to play him. Not in love with it, but I'm going to play him. He's been very good here, obviously, with the win in 2024. What's there to say about his 2026 form? He's been great. I mean, the blunder of the waste management, with notwithstanding, he's been great 2024. Off the tee's been bad, sure, but third in irons. He's actually putt Poa annua very well. I'm going to play Hideki. I'm not in love with it. I'm going to limit my use of Hideki. Colin Morikawa, fine. Cantlay, fine. Very popular, but fine. If I have the money to go to them, I will. But I'm not stretching myself to go in on them, if that makes sense. Siwoo, not a good Siwoo fit here. Not big on Siwoo this week. And a lot of people like Cameron Young. I'm always going to be low on Cameron Young, mostly because of the irons, greens, not played or not hit a lot of greens, especially when it's difficult. Despite the fact that he's played very well here, he's just not putt Poa annua very well. There's just a lot that concerns me with Cameron Young, other than the fact that he's played very well here. I'm very concerned. So Cameron Young is also a player that I'm just not playing. I'm going to take a stand. And you got to take stands, especially in a limited field event. You just got to take stands on guys. Don't have to answer, but was curious if you are comfortable sharing how many lineups you usually make, what the bankroll looks like. I don't ever talk about bankroll. I mean, even when I post my ownership, my shares or my percentages, I always black out how much money is tied into that. But I will tell you, I play mini contests. So I make lots of lineups every week. I'm talking 100 plus lineups that I make, and then I will kind of filter it down from there. But I do make more than 100 lineups each week. I can tell you that much. I put a lot of effort into lineup building. So hopefully that answers some of that question. But I don't ever talk about the money, and I'll never talk about how much I put on a player if I hit an outright. Because again, as an analyst, I'm more concerned about if my thought process, if my analysis was right, and that way you all can share and enjoy in that, or share in my misery when I'm an idiot and get things completely wrong, because that does happen from time to time. I just try to limit it. But yeah, elsewhere in the 9Ks, like I'm not going to Siwoo, not going to Cameron Young, and even though Victor rated out fairly middling, maybe top third, I really like Victor this week. Yes, he's not been good off the tee early in 2026, but number one proximity, 150 to 200. Hits greens. We all know about his ball striking. He's not going to be able to take advantage of the 15th hole like he normally does, since they planted some trees on him. I still think Victor is primed to win at Riviera at some point. His game just fits Riviera. So I'm very, very high on Victor this week. So in the 9Ks, I am going to play a little Hideki. I don't love it because of all the ownership, but I am going to play a little bit of Hideki. I'll play Colin Morikawa and Cantlay whenever I have the money for it, but I'm not stretching myself to go there. And I'll play quite a bit of Victor. I like Victor this week. Good evening, Trip. Thanks for jumping into chat. Very much appreciated. Hopefully you're ready for the Genesis. We're having a showdown on Xander was my second. Okay, yeah. I mean, that's where you and I are going to disagree this week. Vic was your first, so love to hear it. Vic was the player that I targeted from the beginning of the week. Once Sunday rolled around and, Pebble Beach didn't look like it was going to go my way until Sepp Straka teased me a little bit. When my focus turned to Riv, I looked at Victor. I wanted a higher price on him. You're always going to want a higher price on your player, but I arbitrarily set a number in my mind. Woke up Monday morning, saw the number, bet it outright. Just bet it right off the bat. Victor was my target from the word go this week. A couple others too, but Victor was my main one where I went to sleep Sunday night and put a number on it and said, if it's higher, I'm betting it regardless. And then if it's lower, I'll think about it. So But thanks for jumping in chat, Trip. Very much appreciated. And yeah, we'll be different on Zander this week. I'm just not confident his game is all the way there yet. So if he plays well, I'll struggle in DFS. But that's the way I see the 9Ks. Moving to the 8s, there's players I like in here, but it's kind of a dead zone because I'm playing Scotty, I'm playing Tommy, I'm playing a few of these guys in the 9Ks. Scotty just doesn't give you a lot of wiggle room. So in the 8s, I'll give you some players that I like, but I'm not playing them all that much just because it's a dead zone for me. I don't think there's a player in this tournament with a wider range of outcomes than Sam Burns. This guy could win because on the back of his putter, I mean, he's probably the best putter in the immediacy. Denny McCarthy probably has more of a long-term track record, but in the immediacy, Sam Burns is probably the best putter in the world. He finished top 10 here in 2024. The irons have actually been okay. He's been keeping it in the realm of the ballpark so far off the tee, which is normally Sam Burns' bugaboo. There's a lot to like here. It's just he's in an awkward price for me. How can you not think about Chris Goddard and the way he has started 2026? Again, just kind of an awkward price point. Jake Knapp, I like. I've been trying to get to Jake Knapp whenever possible, but it seems like a lot of our fellow contestants seem to be going to Jake Knapp. So, great off the tee, bogey avoider. It's just off your screen. That's an 8. He's 8th in bogey avoidance. Top 10, POA and a putter. A lot to like here. Again, just at an awkward price point. Matt Fitzpatrick is somebody that I want to like. This ownership is ugly, so I've kind of cooled on Matt Fitzpatrick. And then at the bottom, I would take a long look at Matt McNeely at 8,100. There's a lot to like here. And don't forget, he is a California guy. So, I mean, even though he has not officially played Riv, or at least he didn't play Riv in 2024, he's a California guy. He knows Poa Annua. He knows the course. Top 10 Poa Annua putter. Top 20 in the Procs early this year. There's a lot to like here with Mav. So seeing him at a middling price at 8,100 and at a middling ownership, I like Mav McNeely quite a bit. He's been the guy that's mostly been populating my lineups if I have a few extra hundred to spare, whether that's in a Scotty or in a Tommy Fleetwood lineup. I've been coming up to Mav McNeely. I think this sets up well for him. So there's a look at the 8s. I'm out on Ben Griffin. I'm out on Ricky. Ludwig, I have no idea where his game is right now. I know he played well here in 2024, and then technically the defending champion, even though the tournament was played at Torrey Pines last year. I don't know where in the world his game is. If you have any confidence in Ludwig, this sets up well for him. But, oof, it's been bad to start 2026. And then I'm just not there with Bobby Mack either. Moving down into the 7s. Talked about Harris English in the reveal of my top 10. Love everything about Harris English this week. Think about his win at Torrey. Very comparable course to Riv. Number 1 and off the tee. Number 2, Poa Annua putter. That's a very good combination. Plays very difficult par 4s well. Avoids bogeys. Keeps the ball in front of him. He's not going to get too wayward and lose himself in a hole. I like Harris English quite a bit this week. A lot of people seem to be gravitating to Straka. I'd rather go to Shane Lowry. I know Straka rates out better or higher, but what's wrong with Shane other than the fact that he's only played one tournament? He played pretty well last week. And if you look at his DP World Tour stats, like his irons are sizzling right now. I don't collect DP World Tour stats. I just took a cursory look at them. He's sizzling with the irons right now. So this probably sets up fairly well for Shane, although he does have a little bit of the Russell Henley problem where he can lack some distance. He generally depends on like that European style stinger, running the ball up, and you're just not going to be able to do that around Riviera. But I mean, he's still pretty darn good on Poa Annua. I like Sepp, but at the same price, I'm going to Shane. a lot more. J-Day, fine. A lot of people are going to Minwoo Lee. I want to like Minwoo Lee. That's a pretty ugly ownership. And he gained quite a bit with the putter last week, so it has me a little bit cautious. But I am playing some amount of Minwoo Lee. Maybe not 10%, but more than that 6 to 8% of my lineups. I'm playing Minwoo Lee. And then moving down, number one player in my rankings, by the math, is Pearson Coody. I like Pearson Coody a lot this week. Don't get me wrong. I wouldn't put him number one in my rankings, but I think this is a much better fit than Pebble was for him. In fact, if we go to his player page view, just very, very quickly, Pearson Coody. Bam. If we take a look at how he did at Pebble Beach, I know it was bad, but Pebble really limits the off the tee, and he still did pretty well there. Lovely distance is my thing. I think distance is going to be a pretty big factor considering, this horrendous forecast for tomorrow. It's been wet basically all winter in Southern California, so the course was already, wet or soaked. So it's going to be wet over there tomorrow. He didn't have very good short game at Pebble. And this is an outlier. I mean, Pebble is a unique challenge because you take a look at the rest of his performance, particularly around the green. It was just a bad week around the green wise. He still hit his irons well, still drove it well. I don't see anything wrong with Pearson Coody. I think he just had a bad short game week. If he has it again, okay, well, then I'm going to struggle because I'm going to play quite a bit of Pearson Coody again this week. I also think it helps that he has one of the first tee times, if not the first tee time. Sammy, Poston, Hoey. Oh, I could be wrong with that. I thought he was teeing off earlier. 11:03. Yeah, it's somewhat early. Not the earliest, but somewhat early. So that could help a little bit. So I like Coody again. I'll be playing a lot of Coody this week. And don't overlook Kurt Kitayama either. Kitayama, half the ownership, maybe even like 40% of the ownership. He's played Riv. Like, people forget, even though he won last year at the 3M, which is very easy. Kitayama also won at Bay Hill. Long, difficult course that tests every aspect of your game, much like Riviera does. Kitayama's been good with the irons early in 2026. Off the tee's fine. He does struggle on POA, so that is a little bit of a concern. I'm just banking on him hitting a lot of greens, keeping the ball in play, letting his really good ball striking take over because he very rarely misses fairways and greens. He's got plenty of distance. I like Kitayama a lot this week, especially at this 4.5%. I am going to be extremely overweight on Kitayama. So if Kitayama does not play well, I will lose. And then I'll give a cursory look at Max Homa just because he's been so good here in the past. But his game, I don't think, is quite up to snuff yet. He is the number one putter on Poa Annua, so that's not nothing. So I'll give a cursory nod to Max Homa. I'm going there a couple of times just for the course history, but I'm not in love with it. I'd much rather go to like Coody and Kitayama. And then in the 6Ks, I'm going to be honest with you, there's not a whole lot I love in the 6Ks other than Ryo Hitsatsune, which isn't saying much because he is the most popular 6K play. No, second most popular. Tony Finau is your most popular 6K play. And I'm going to tell you right now, I want no part of Tony Finau this week. You know why? Because he just had his best putting week ever. Ever. On the PGA Tour last week. So people are getting excited about Tony Finau and him being back. He putts well on Poa, sure, but he gained 8.25 shots putting last week. By far and away his best performance, even over wins like Houston and the RBC Canadian. This is a complete outlier result for Tony Finau. Sorry, it just is. He's still not good with the off the tee. His irons are starting to show a little bit of life, sure, but like he's still not putting it all together, other than maybe at the Farmers, and he still lost strokes there. So, no thanks on Tony. Don't get carried away with this top 20 from last week. It was all predicated on the putter. Sounded like the same like that forever. Yep. Good shout there, Turkey. I love it. Hey, Hanka. Good evening. Thanks for jumping in chat. Very much appreciated. Any Minwoo talk? Yeah, I like Minwoo. I didn't bet him, although that was one that I heavily considered. I will tell you, I did not wager him. In DFS, it's kind of hard because he is pretty popular for his area of the price board in the mid sevens. But yes, I do like Minwoo. It's not that I don't. It's just I don't like that ownership for DFS. The number just wasn't high enough for my liking on Minwoo. Like if we check Minwoo's page just very quickly, he gained quite a bit on those greens last week as well, which gives me some concern. But his irons were also really solid. His off the tee game is never a doubt. I like him. There were others that I liked. I like their prices more. So if I make more wagers, between now and then, Minwoo is going to be heavily considered. But my betting card, just as it stands right now, and I'll post my official one, later this evening or even tomorrow if I make a few more. But I had a really big betting card for Pebble, and I had a really big betting card for the Waste Management. I kind of backed off a little bit this week. It's a lot smaller of a betting card for the Genesis for me this week. Just saying, just being honest there. But good question. Keep them coming in. I'll be more than happy to answer what I can. But I do want to make sure I get in through all of this. So in the 6Ks, again, other than Ryo Hitsatsune, who's the second most popular player in here, which, I love Ryo. He's not going to be as unique as you're hoping for, but I love Ryo Hitsatsune. You can take a look at Max McGreevy again. I mentioned him last week, and it didn't work out all that well. But this guy just flat out really, really hits his irons well. And that's what you're going to need around Riv. Hits greens when it's difficult. Not the best putter on POA, which is a little bit concerning. But I just don't think Max McGreevy's going to implode, basically. He's not going to inject himself out of the tournament. Pinge and Stevens in the 6K for you, Echoes. I looked at Marco Pinge a little bit. But man, his irons have been really bad to start 2026. If he showed any kind of life with his irons, then I would have agreed with you and would have used him. But man, his irons have been really bad. Very small sample size, but he's also not putt POA very well either last week or at the Farmers. He was on the periphery for me, Echoes, but no thanks on Marco Pinge. And then Sam Stevens, he rates out well. Yeah, maybe I should have taken a little bit longer of a look at him considering he's 19th, but I don't know. It didn't feel great. I don't know. Gut feeling. Maybe I'm going to come back to this next week and tell you were right, like I had to tell Phil about Ryo Hitsatsune last week. Very well could happen. I don't know. Just kind of a gut feeling on Sam Stevens. He's also fairly popular. He's actually, I'm just now noticing, he's a little bit more popular than Ryo Hitsatsune. So be aware of that, Echoes, as well. He's also getting some attention. But, I mean, good shout. He is top 20 by the numbers for me, which is a little bit surprising. A couple of names here that I want to make sure I mention. mentioned Max McGreevy. Down at the bottom, if you're really, really trying to squeeze in your Scotty Scheffler lineups or you're trying to get really greedy up top, a couple of players in the low sixes. First, I want to mention Sami Välimäki. He has not shown hardly anything in 2026, but very good putter on POA, very good in the wind, very good around the green. If this gets very difficult, I do like Sammy. And then the other player might not be a surprise if you were here for Monday night's show. It's Nico. And Nico hit his irons spectacularly around Pebble Beach. I am going to hope that continues. Nico's been okay here. Or no, that wasn't him. That was somebody else. He had a middling 33rd finish. Generally keeps himself in the hole. Top 10, good drives. I know there's not a lot statistically here for Nico, considering he's 65th out of 72. I liked his irons last week. He didn't gain all that much with the putter, so it's the opposite of the Tony Finau effect, really. Tony Finau gained boatloads on the greens last week, a little bit of a red herring. Nico's irons woke up last week, so I'm hoping that the irons, stay hot for another week at 6,300. Good evening, Chronic. Thanks for jumping in chat. Much appreciated. I kind of like Bud Cauley. I've heard some people talk about Bud Cauley. It makes a lot of sense. The irons have been very good. Greens. I didn't get to him because I'm playing Nico and Sami Välimäki. But like Marco Pinge, if I were to expand my player pool by a couple, like one or two more 6Ks, it would have been Bud Cauley, Marco Pinge, and now that Echoes shouted him out, Sam Stevens probably deserves a long look, considering he finished top 20 as well. Again, I'm just not there with Tony Finau. Don't fall in love with Tony Finau this week. He gained his most ever strokes by a wide margin last week at Pebble. So don't fall in love with that. Okay, we've got some lineups to make, and then to cover the 2026 Picks Challenge. Let's start by making some what we think are going to be popular lineups and see how we can maneuver around them. Of course, the most owned player, Scotty. The most owned 6K play, I just said him and I lost him, Tony Finau. Still doesn't give you a whole lot of maneuverability down here. Tony, and then the other one is Sam Stevens. Sam Stevens. Sorry, this is going to bother me, so let me fix that for you. They might not do double six, but I'm just trying to give them as much maneuverability up here as possible. It looks like it could be like Scotty, Minwoo, Ryan Gerard at 10%, and Akshay. That's 100 more. I understand this is 100 more, or 100 over, but this looks like a somewhat chalky build for Scotty. Coming down to Minwoo, Batia, Gerard, and then find 2Ks that they're playing, whether it's Finau and Stevens, Finau and Hitsatsune. Maybe they're coming off Gerard and going to maybe Max at 8.5% or something. This looks like a fairly common Scotty lineup, and that's the difficulty with building Scotty lineups this week. Just all the pricing. You have players that you won't play. Yes, John, a few. I'm full fading Rory. It's very dangerous to do. I get it, but you can't play everybody, especially in a limited field event. You got to take some stands somewhere. So I'm full fading Rory, I'm full fading Xander, and I'm full fading Cameron Young. Those are probably the three biggest names that I'm full fading this week for various reasons. There's a look at a Scotty lineup. If they build Rory seems a little bit more palatable in terms of pricing. I am still going to go to Finau, but now they can venture their way into the 8s, like a Matt Fitzpatrick or even a Jake Knapp. I'm doing Fitzpatrick because he's a little bit more owned. Harris English, Sepp Straka. Love those flag plants in the fades. I mean, we'll see if it works out for me, but especially in a 72-man field where only 20 or so players are going to get cut, you just got to take chances on guys. You just do. And that's where I'm taking my chances this week. Fitzpatrick, Harris English. Actually, they could probably jump up a little bit. Ludwig might be in this. Yeah. English or Sepstraka. And then 72 is Gerard. This looks like a Rory lineup. Thoughts on Ricky? He's playing well. I didn't want any part of Ricky this week. I injured good, sure. He played okay here in 2024, but I'm always going to be late on Ricky for what it's worth. And I wish they had a search function in here, and I just don't see it. Ricky. Another thing, too, he's not been great in the wind. This is sorted on moderate and windy conditions. Ricky's not been good in the wind chronic, according to the rabbit hole. He's not been good around the green in 2026. Three top 20s is solid. But he's been just kind of getting by with the driver. It's been the putter that's bailing him out quite a bit, other than at the Amex where you only had 2 rounds of data. I mean, it's not the worst, but I went to different players. Feel like he's a decent... Sure, for a top 20 bet? Sure, yeah. I don't know his odds for a top 20 off the top of my head, but it's reasonable. Sure. I can't imagine that his odds are great considering he's mid-8s for DFS. But I mean, if you were to get, I don't know, 2 to 1, 2.5, 3 to 1, yeah, okay. I don't hate it for that wager. To top 20, I think you can top 20. There's a look at the Rory lineup, what a chalky Rory lineup would seemingly look like this week. Anything else? We'll save the balance because as of right now, that is the type of lineup that we're going to build to put in a contest. So, how have I been maneuvering around these different lineups? Well, if I'm playing Scotty, and I'm playing roughly 40 to 45% Scotty. How have I been doing it? I've been going down to the really, really low pricing of Sami Valimaki, Nico. Maybe I can squeeze in a little bit of an upper 6 with Rio. But I'm going to go Rio and Sami Valimaki here. And again, you got to take chances. Sammy did not rate out well. I'm playing him for his short game, for his POA prowess. He's a pretty good putter on POA. Pretty good in the wind as well. If we take a look at Sammy just very quickly. Like Nico, middle of the pack, 46 out of 72. But Sammy's actually close to top 20 in terms of total performance in the wind. Now, this only really applies tomorrow, but, you can see a lot of players playing themselves out of the tournament tomorrow with how horrible that forecast looks. At least Sammy's good in the wind, and he's got the best tee time. He is teeing off first tomorrow with Poston and Rico Hoey. So there's a lot to like with that. Brings back to this. So how have I been building my... Sorry, let me exit out of this other file before I forget. This gives me a little bit of more maneuverability with Scotty. Again, I really like Harris English this week. I'm going to play a lot of Harris English. A lot. Probably more than I should. Pearson Cootie's in this. Number 1 player in my rankings. And I love Kurt Kitayama. So, leaving a couple hundred on the table. Again, highlighting the uniqueness here. You might be able to afford to go to a Minwoo Lee if you're really high on a Minwoo Lee. Somebody mentioned Marco Pinch, who's right around this price point or maybe even lower instead of Sammy. This is the way I've been building my Scotty lineups this week. I mean, Harris English, as I mentioned as I went through the price board, if I have the money, sometimes I've been kind of sneaking up to Matt McNeely. So Matt McNeely could go right here. But Pearson Coody and Kitayama have been kind of anchoring my Scotty lineups because I really like both of those players this week. And then otherwise, if I'm not playing Scotty, I'm playing Tommy. I'm not playing Rory, so I'm playing Tommy. And Tommy gives you a whole lot more flexibility than Scotty. Like, you can go Tommy, take your choice in the 9Ks. I wouldn't go Hideki. Otherwise, it's probably all hands on deck. Like, you can go Cantlay, who's just been very solid around here. Don't even have to flirt with the 6Ks if you don't want to. Although the more you go into the 6Ks, the more you're going to be unique. But we can finish this lineup up with Max Homa. If we're really leaning into the course history mantra and thought process there, playing Patrick Cantlay for all of his course success, playing Max Homa for all of his course success, then you can come up to somebody like Harris English, who finished 10th here. Somebody in the 8s we could look at. Again, I'm not there with Ludwig. Jake Knapp maybe. Matt, I really like McNeely this week. Good form and course history. Yeah, I mean, course history is very important at Riviera. Again, I'm only using 1 year because of the 2024 being the signature event, limited field, limited cut. Because 2023 and back, it was a 120-man field or so. Know a lot of guys that like Hideki. I mean, Hideki makes a lot of sense around here, but for DFS purposes alone, Hanka, I'm not all that thrilled because he is very, very popular. But yes, Hideki makes a lot of sense. Just to finish this lineup up, just very, very quickly, like Shane Lowry, again, sub 8%, probably more like sub 10% Shane Lowry, who played pretty well last week, and his irons are in fuego. And then to finish it off, again, Pearson Coody, Kurt Kitayama. Let's go Pearson. You've got two big ownerships here, but this lineup's probably going to be fairly unique with, your two top-end guys, and then I'm going to call Matt McNeely a 7. I understand he's at 8-1, but, you got your two top-end guys and your 4 7s. So that's the way I've been building a lot of my lineups. Let's go ahead, as promised. We're going to build a lineup, and we're going to straight enter it into a contest, a big GPP contest over at DraftKings. So get those votes in very, very quickly. But right now, the community has voted to make a balanced lineup. Now, I will put this caveat out there. This is my money I'm spending, so I'm going to make an executive decision on one player that we're putting in here. And it kind of fits just because it is a balanced lineup. Whether or not he's our first player in or second, I'm going to make the executive decision that we're putting Victor in here. Little bit of foreshadowing. Victor is going to come up a lot on social media in terms of outright card, in terms of lineups, here in a little bit for the picks challenge. I'm really high on Victor this week, so we're going to make the executive decision, or I'm going to make the executive decision that Victor Hovland comes into this lineup. Otherwise, I'm opening the floor to the community. I've seen Harris English. I love that. He's a little bit popular, but I do like Harris English. I'll slot him in here for now, but this is completely fluid. If we're looking at a balanced build, Echoes, if everybody likes Obear, I'll put him in. I want no part of Obear this week. I played 0 Obear. But if the rest of the community wants to put him in, I will. I think the first decision we need to make is if Is Hovland our top guy, or is he second? And if he's not our highest priced player, who is it? Is it Hideki? Is it Cantlay? Maybe I'll take it. No Bear. I don't want any part of Obear this week, but again, this is a community lineup, not my lineup. I've seen Cantlay, who I don't mind. I don't mind Morikawa. I don't hate Hideki, although that's a lot of ownership already. I'll put Cantlay until someone says someone said Hovland top dog. Where do we want to bottom this out at? Because we're building a balanced lineup that it seems like either Cantlay or Hovland is the top. We don't have to go very far down into the sevens if we don't want to. Having said that, if we were to leave some money on the table, it would give us more uniqueness. So, is there anybody in the sixes that we want to make this maybe like a balanced -1 type lineup? Make, nines, eights, maybe a 7 or 2, and then a 6. If not, that's fine. But the more we're willing to go into the sixes, the more uniqueness we're going to have. In my opinion, we would go to like Rio, Sam Stevens. Sam Stevens was looking good. You and who was it else that said Stevens? Oh, Echoes. So Hanka says Shane Lowry. I like Shane Lowry a lot as well. We've got a lot here. We have 3 players left, and we can average about 8,000 per. John says Sepp. I don't mind Sepp either. Shane Lowry is a shout. If we want to get greedy, we can go Sam Stevens. Let's see. These two would fill out like the traditional balanced lineup. How does everyone feel about Shane? Sugar Shane. Because Shane and Sepp are both 7,800. See, Chronic, you're also on another wavelength that I like. I've got a little bit of Jason Day this week. I didn't talk about him too much, but we all know his love for Poa annua. Finished top 10 here. I like that shout quite a bit. Sub 10%. Round the green, Poa putting. I'm never going to say no to the Shamrock. So it sounds like we've got a lot of love for Shane. And I'll just put him there for now. So we've got 8,000 per. I think it's fair to say Sam Stevens is a little bit off the table just because we're trying to build a balanced lineup. And I think this is going to be fairly unique so far. Day is great. Some other options that we have in here, we can look at. Again, I like Mav McNeely quite a bit. Somebody did say Ludwig. I'll put Ludwig on the table. Matt Fitzpatrick is another option, although I do worry about his ownership because we're putting this lineup in and it's our one shot. We're going to put this is not a single entry contest. I'm going to put this in a big GPP, but I'm only going to have one lineup. So I do worry about ownership with Fitzpatrick. Like I said, my votes would be something like Mav McNeely, although I made the executive decision on Hovland. So we've got these 4 so far. Somebody also mentioned Ricky earlier in the show. If we go... So Justin Rose is an option as well, although I'm not as high on Justin Rose this week. Yeah, top 20 for me, but I am much more comfortable with like a Sepp Straka, Jason Day. Do we have money for the boom? But we absolutely have money for Sam Burns if we wanted to. Jake Knapp's an excellent shout as well. Like if we go Sam Burns just to take a look, then we're having to go all the way down to Max Homa to finish out, or a 6K. So that's the issue with Sam Burns, is being at 8,900. Unique. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to talk about. I mean, Burns is also fairly unique. Jake Knapp isn't. He's getting some ownership, but if we were to play Jake Knapp, then at 74 and down, we'd have players like maybe Harry Hall, again, Pearson Coody or Kitayama, who I really like, Homa, Gerard. We're still looking, in that lower sevens. So that's the issue with Knapp plus the ownership. Don't really feel that with Knapp for that one, John. I just don't feel it. Coody, everyone seems, I don't want to say everyone, but Pearson Coody's an option. Like, it depends on, do we want Lowry to be our bottom player? If not, then we certainly have a lot more flexibility. But that's also kind of an interesting lineup. If you put a 7,800 Shane Lowry as your bottom, your lowest price player, that's pretty solid. J-Day at 77 could be our lowest price. Coody. Ricky, much the same as Colin was bonkers off the tee last week instead of Cantlay. I don't hate Colin over Cantlay. And his we all know his irons were fantastic. Look at Colin just very quickly. Well, did I pass him? Yeah, I just saw him. There he is. It was more his irons, John, which you would expect from Colin. But he was fine off the tee. Wasn't world beater, but he gained 10 with the irons. That's what Morikawa did last week. Kit is a grinder. Is that Kurt Kitayama? Because if that's Kitayama, I really like Kitayama this week as well. Again, is Lowry our bottom option? Is Lowry our bottom? Colin spent too much time with his little tiny dog with booties on after last week's win. I mean, Colin's played well around Riv, though, to be fair to Colin. And again, we don't have to have Cantlay. We can put Victor as our top player. Somebody did mention that. Let's try to end this up very quickly just because I want to show you all the lineup that we put in, and I still need to cover the picks challenge. So give me 2 players, 2 or 3 players here that to finish this off. Rapid fire edition. 2 to 3 players. Because right now with these 4 players, we have an average of 8,000. So we could do Coody and Jake Knapp. Or Kitayama and Jake Knapp. So I mean technically Jake Knapp is back on the table, but it would have to be combined with these 2. We could do a Fitz and a Coody or Knapp. So basically the combinations are Day, Coody, Kit. Okay? That's some options. Day, Coody, and Kit. So it looks like Lowry up to here. If we go Kurt, that leaves us 87. That leaves us. I'm with you, Trip. Why don't we leave some money on the table, make this extra unique, and go J-Day? How do we feel about this? Cantlay, Hovland, English, Lowry, Day, and Kitayama. Sure, we're leaving some very good players on the table. Sepp and Coody's another option. How do we feel about something like this? And of course, you are more than welcome to, use this or use the shell of this for your own lineups. Maybe instead of Lowry, you go to Sepp. Maybe instead of Kitayama, you go to Coody. There are plenty of options. So if this is the lineup that we're going to build, as promised, start with Cantlay, Hovland, shoot, I already forgot. Cantley, Hovland, English, Lowry, Day, and Kitayama, leaving 1,000 on the table. English, Lowry, Day, and Kurt. That is the lineup that we, as the community, have agreed on. So there's the lineup that we have entered for the birdie. And funnily enough, or coincidentally, the birdie is what Gabe plays. So good little segue here as we talk about the 2026 Picks Challenge. But you can follow along and see how we compare. It is only one lineup, but how we compare to some of Gabe's lineups, because he always max fills the birdies. Good evening, Sam. Thanks for jumping in chat. Much appreciated. Let's have a week. Jump in late. Leaning Fleetwood, one and done. I do like Fleetwood, although he will be popular this week. So if you're not concerned with being unique in terms of one and done, I don't hate it, because I am playing probably 40 to 45% Scotty in my lineups, Sam. I'm playing probably 45 to 50% Tommy in my lineups. So I do really, really like Tommy this week. Could you also put the scrambling in order? Because it's hard for me to find those. I will do that very, very quickly. So I will bring this over here. I will highlight it in a shade of blue for you all. That is our community lineup in the birdie this week. Per request, I will sort on scrambling, and do note, John, very quickly as I do this, do note that this is scrambling specifically on Poa Annua greens. Okay. Whoa, that didn't work. Nope, I want column U, smallest to largest. There we go. So your top scramblers on Poa Annua: Scotty, Henley, Hideki, Jake Knapp, Dina McCarthy, Lowry, Rory, Ryan Gerard, Harry Hall, Brian Harmon are your top 10 scramblers on Poa Annua. And I will scroll down slowly for you. That way, if you need to pause the video or come back to it, you can look at your earliest convenience, John. There's your sorted scrambling with the specific filter of Poa Annua greens, because scrambling incorporates a little bit of putting. Very quickly before the 2026 Picks Challenge, I got to give you my core for the week. And obviously this is not all in one lineup. I'm either playing Scotty or Tommy, one of the two. Victor is absolutely part of my core. I'm going to say Mav McNeely. I'm going to highlight him in a kind of a shade of orange. He comes in whenever I have enough money to bring it up to him, but I'm not overly looking for him like, Cantley and Morikawa in the 9s. Like, if I have the money, I'll come up to him, but I'm not actively seeking them out. Harris English, big part of my core this week. Shane's a little bit, but then Cootie, Kurt, and Rio. So that is a very quick look at my core for the week. Again, Scotty or Tommy. Scotty can't play Victor, so most of the time I'm going Scotty or Tommy and Victor. Matt McNeely in a few lineups. Harris English, Pearson Cootie, Kurt Kitayama, and Rio in the 6Ks. And I've been going to Rio even in some Tommy lineups. Even though you don't have to. I've been just saving some money trying to build unique lineups. So I'll have some Rio in some of my Tommy lineups as well. There's my core. All right, very, very quickly, let's cover the 2026 Picks Challenge between Gabe and I. I am down 3 or so points, I think. And again, we encourage you, both Gabe and I encourage you to play along over on his social media page. You'll see our detailed write-ups each week, and specifically this week for Riv. I'm going to pick Victor to win. it gets boring if you're going to pick Scotty to win every single week. And, most of the time Scotty would be the pick to win. So I'm going to pick Victor. As I said in my write-up over on Gabe's social media page, look, there isn't a whole lot statistically that points me to Victor. This is just a gut feeling that I had from the word go this week, is that I was focused on Victor. So if he doesn't play well, I will lose. But Victor is my choice to win this week, and he was my first outright wager as well. Gabe's going to take Tommy. I don't hate that at all. I'm going to play a whole lot of Tommy, so I don't hate that from Gabe. Our favorite plays, I'm going to go with Harris English. He's a little bit more owned than I would like, but at 12.5%, at 7,900, he just fits in whatever style of lineup that you're wanting to build. He fits comfortably in a Scotty lineup, and as we saw, he can anchor a balanced build as well. Gabe's going to play Hideki. Even with all the ownership, he's just very confident. Hideki is going to play well this week. I'm going to fade Xander. There's a few players I'm fading. I'm fading Rory. I'm fading Xander. I'm fading Cameron Young. I just wrote Xander and wrote a blurb about him and the reason why I'm fading him. But there's a few options there for me. Gabe's going to fade Matt Fitzpatrick, which I don't hate because he is the most projected owned player in the 8Ks. But I like Matt Fitzpatrick this week, so Gabe and I are in a little bit of an odds there. Mad Scientist play, way down in the price board, or that's unique and enables different styles of lineups. I'm going to go with Nico Echeverria. And I know that, he rated pretty much close to last for me. I was encouraged by the irons last week. He generally plays pretty well in the wind. I don't know. It's kind of more of a gut feeling on Nico. Honorable mention also to Sami Valimaki. But I'm going to take Nico as the Mad Scientist play. Gabe's going to play Tom Hoagie after last week's pretty impressive performance. I will take a little bit of credit there because Tom Hoagie was my Mad Scientist play last week, and he, top 15, so I was pretty happy with that. FOMO, fear of missing out. I'm going to play Sepp Straka. Again, pretty popular in the upper sevens, but he's been playing well. I just can't get away from Sepp. Even though I like Shane Lowry a lot at the same price, I'm not going to get away from Sepp. And Gabe's going to FOMO Harris English, who I really like this week. And then our wild card category, we talk about California ties a lot when we're on the West Coast swing, and yet we haven't done top California ties as our wild card category yet. And this is our last chance to do it since the Florida swing starts next week. So I'm going to take Mav McNeely as the top Californian, and Gabe's going to go with Patrick Cantlay. So I'll bring us back to that view. And that's going to be it for a DFS Tactics show this week. I've got so many people to thank, so let me get into that. I'm actually going to end the poll since we've already made the lineup. So let me do that. I got a lot of people to thank. Echoes, John, Turkey, Trip, Hanka, Chronic, Sam. I think that's everybody. Did I skip anybody in there? I don't think so. If I did, I truly apologize. I'm just trying to quickly go through chat there and see who all jumped in there. But thanks to all of you for jumping into chat this evening and having some fun with me and building a lineup that we can all cheer for as we try and make some money as a community in the birdie contest. Thanks to all of you for all the support, and thanks to everyone else out there who tunes in, watches, listens, supports the channel by liking the videos, commenting and subscribing. I always appreciate it. I love what I do. Taking a very in-depth look at golf statistics, giving you a statistician and data analyst view of what he sees, trying to help us all win a little bit of money in the process. Quick reminder that once I enter my lineups, I've finalized them, I just haven't entered them. I will post my betting card and my top player usage for the Genesis over on social media. It'll be a little bit later this evening because I still have to do all that work in DK, but it'll be out there. So be on the lookout for that over on social media. And go follow Gabe over on social media so you can play along with us on the 2026 Picks Challenge. But thanks again for all the support. Very, very much appreciated. For all the wagers you've made this week for the Genesis Invitational, for all the DFS contests you play this week for the Genesis Invitational, for this weekend and every weekend, may all your bets be profitable.